The room fell silent as Miguel Alvarez finished speaking. 5 languages had flowed from his lips like music: Spanish, French, Mandarin, Arabic, and flawless English, leaving the glittering crowd of executives stunned. The CEO who had mocked his worn suit moments earlier now stood frozen, champagne glass suspended midair, face flushed with shame. But how did a janitor with patched elbows end up at Boston's most exclusive charity gala, and what journey had brought him to this moment of unexpected triumph? If you're moved by stories of hidden strength, quiet dignity, and the moments when the underestimated finally rise to claim their worth, please like this video and subscribe to our channel for more powerful stories that remind us never to judge a book by its cover. Miguel Alvarez's fingers trembled slightly as he adjusted his tie in the bathroom mirror of the Ritz-Carlton. The charity gala for the Boston Children's Education Fund was already in full swing beyond the door, a symphony of tinkling glasses and polished laughter. He didn't belong here, not in this world of wealth and privilege, but his daughter Sophia did. "You can do this," he whispered to himself. For her. The suit he wore had been his father's, carefully preserved for special occasions. Despite his best efforts with an iron and some careful stitching to repair the worn elbows, it remained visibly dated. The invitation in his pocket felt heavy, almost accusatory. "Special guest," it read, though Miguel knew it was merely a formality extended to scholarship parents. Sophia, his brilliant 12-year-old daughter, had won a full academic scholarship to Westbrook Academy, one of Boston's most prestigious private schools. Tonight's gala was raising funds for similar scholarships, and parent attendance was strongly encouraged. What the invitation hadn't mentioned was the $500 minimum donation expected at the door, money Miguel had scraped together by taking extra night shifts cleaning offices for the past 3 months. He took a deep breath and pushed through the bathroom door. The ballroom glittered with chandeliers and wealth. Women draped in designer gowns and men in tailored tuxedos clustered in comfortable groups, their ease with one another speaking of shared summer homes and private club memberships. Miguel moved carefully along the periphery, nodding politely when eyes briefly met his before sliding away with disinterest. At the bar, he ordered a club soda, the cheapest option, and turned to observe the room. That's when he spotted Richard Harrington, CEO of Harrington Global Investments and chairman of Westbrook Academy's Board of Trustees. Even without knowing his face from the school's website, Miguel would have recognized power when he saw it. Harrington stood at the center of an attentive circle, his custom tuxedo and commanding presence drawing people like moths to flame. Miguel had just begun to drift toward the scholarship display when he felt a gentle tap on his shoulder. "Mr. Alvarez?" "Miguel Alvarez?" A woman with kind eyes and a name tag identifying her as Dr. Eleanor Chen, headmistress, smiled at him. "I'm so glad you could join us tonight. Sophia is one of our brightest new students." Pride swelled in Miguel's chest. "Thank you. She works very hard. Her language aptitude is particularly remarkable. 5 languages at 12 years old. I understand you're to thank for that." Miguel smiled modestly. "We moved around a lot when she was younger. I tried to teach her the local languages wherever we went. Well, it's extraordinary. Would you mind if I introduced you to some of our board members? They love hearing about our scholarship success stories." Before Miguel could formulate a polite refusal, Dr. Chen was guiding him toward the circle surrounding Richard Harrington. As they approached, Miguel caught the tail end of what appeared to be a joke, the punchline delivered in Harrington's booming voice. "And then I told him, that's why we have people to translate for us." The group erupted in appreciative laughter. Dr. Chen touched Harrington's arm. "Richard, I'd like you to meet Miguel Alvarez, father of our new multilingual prodigy, Sophia." Harrington turned, his gaze sweeping over Miguel's worn suit with barely concealed disdain. "Ah, one of our charity cases. Tell me, Mr. Alvarez, what is it you do?" The question hung in the air, its intent clear to everyone in the circle. Miguel felt heat rise to his face but kept his expression neutral. "I work in building maintenance," he answered evenly. A janitor. How fascinating. Harrington's smile didn't reach his eyes. And yet your daughter speaks multiple languages? Perhaps she gets her brains from her mother's side? A few uncomfortable chuckles rippled through the group. Dr. Chen's smile faltered. Sophia's mother passed away when she was 4, Miguel said quietly. Oh, my condolences, Harrington replied without sincerity. It must be difficult raising a child on a janitor's salary. Thank goodness for our charity, eh? He turned to the group. This is exactly why we host these events, ladies and gentlemen. To help the less fortunate. Miguel felt something shift inside him, not anger, but a quiet determination. He had endured far worse than this man's casual cruelty. He had crossed borders, worked 3 jobs simultaneously, learned new languages and cultures, all to give Sophia a better life. He would not be diminished here. Mr. Harrington, Miguel said, his voice clear and steady, I believe education is the greatest gift we can give our children. That's why I taught Sophia myself before she earned her scholarship. Harrington raised an eyebrow. You? Taught her languages? Come now. Dr. Chen interjected, actually, Richard, Sophia speaks Spanish, English, French, Mandarin, and Arabic fluently. It's quite remarkable. A janitor who speaks 5 languages? Harrington laughed, turning to his audience. Next you'll tell me he quotes Shakespeare while mopping floors. The circle had grown larger now, other guests drawn to the spectacle of Harrington's mockery. Miguel noticed a few uncomfortable glances, but no one intervened. Actually, Miguel said calmly, switching to perfect French, I find Molière more appropriate when discussing those who mistake wealth for worth. The sudden shift silenced Harrington momentarily. Miguel continued in flawless Mandarin, Confucius said that true nobility is being superior to your former self, not to others. Gasps and murmurs spread through the crowd as Miguel shifted to Arabic, his pronunciation impeccable. In my mother's language, we have a saying that the most beautiful voices are those that speak for others. Then, in Spanish, his native tongue, my daughter learns not just words but the dignity that comes from understanding other perspectives. Finally, returning to English, Miguel looked directly at Harrington. I may clean your offices at night, Mr. Harrington, but I was once a professor of comparative literature at the University of Barcelona. Political upheaval forced me to flee with nothing but my daughter and the languages in my head. Your company's offices are just one of 3 places I clean each night to ensure Sophia has the opportunities one lost. The silence that followed was absolute. Every eye in the now substantial crowd was fixed on Miguel and the stunned CEO. Dr. Chen was the first to recover. Mr. Alvarez was being modest earlier. Before coming to America, he was indeed a distinguished academic. His daughter's linguistic gifts clearly come from excellent teaching. Harrington's face had turned an uncomfortable shade of red. I had no idea. Few people ask janitors about their past lives, Miguel replied without bitterness. But perhaps that's the point of tonight's event, to recognize that potential exists everywhere, even where we least expect it. A woman in the crowd began to applaud, and others quickly joined in. The applause spread across the ballroom, growing into a standing ovation. Miguel stood uncomfortably in its center, unused to such attention. When the applause finally subsided, Harrington cleared his throat. Mr. Alvarez, I owe you an apology. My comments were inexcusable. Miguel nodded his acceptance but said nothing more. He had not come here for conflict or recognition, only for Sophia. As the crowd began to disperse, Harrington touched Miguel's arm. Could we speak privately for a moment? In a quiet corner of the ballroom, Harrington's arrogance had vanished. I meant what I said about being sorry. I made assumptions that were not only wrong but beneath the values this school claims to uphold. Miguel studied the man carefully. We all make mistakes, Mr. Harrington. What matters is learning from them. Indeed. Harrington hesitated. Our company has been looking for someone to head our international communications department, someone with exactly your linguistic skills and cultural understanding. Would you consider coming in for an interview? Miguel blinked in surprise. Clean your offices. And apparently, that was a criminal waste of your talents. The position pays 6 figures and would include a full benefits package. Harrington pulled out a business card. Think about it. Your daughter deserves to see her father using his gifts. The story of what happened at the gala spread quickly through Westbrook Academy. By Monday morning, Sophia was approaching her father with confusion. Dad, why is everyone looking at me differently? And why did Mrs. Peterson call you Professor Alvarez when she saw us this morning? Miguel sighed as he parked their old car in the drop-off zone. Something happened at the gala. I'll tell you after school. That evening, as they sat in their small apartment eating dinner, Miguel explained everything, his confrontation with Harrington, the job offer, and the decision he now faced. But Dad, why didn't you ever tell me you were a professor? Sophia's eyes were wide with wonder. Miguel reached across the table to take her hand. Because I didn't want you to feel the weight of what we'd lost. When we came here, I decided to look forward, not back. Is that why you kept teaching me languages even when you were so tired from work? Languages are keys, Sophia. They open doors no one can close behind you. He squeezed her hand. I wanted you to have as many keys as possible. Sophia considered this. Are you going to take the job? I don't know. It would change many things. You should, she said firmly. You always tell me to use my gifts. You should use yours too. Miguel smiled at his daughter's wisdom. When did you get so smart? I had a good teacher, she replied with a grin. 2 months later, Miguel Alvarez walked into Harrington Global Investments wearing a new suit that fit perfectly. As Director of International Communications, his first project was developing a scholarship program for immigrants with advanced degrees who needed help having their credentials recognized in America. At the program's launch event, Richard Harrington introduced Miguel to the assembled press and company executives. Sometimes the most valuable assets in a company are the ones we overlook, Harrington said. Miguel Alvarez taught me that lesson, and it's changed how we do business. When it was Miguel's turn to speak, he began in English but finished his address by speaking briefly in each of his 5 languages. For the final words, he switched back to English. My daughter once asked me why I kept teaching her languages even when I was exhausted from cleaning offices all night. I told her that languages are keys that open doors no one can close behind you. Today, we're not just launching a scholarship program, we're creating keys for people who have so much to offer if only given the chance to unlock their potential. The applause was thunderous, but Miguel's eyes sought only Sophia, sitting proudly in the front row. For her, he had crossed oceans and endured hardships. For her, he had swallowed his pride and cleaned floors despite his education. And now, for her, he stood tall again, reclaiming not just his dignity but creating a legacy that would help others like them. The story of Miguel Alvarez spread far beyond Boston, inspiring companies across the country to look more closely at the hidden talents within their workforce. Westbrook Academy established the Alvarez Scholarship specifically for children of immigrants, and Miguel became a regular speaker at educational conferences, always emphasizing the same message: dignity resides not in what we do for a living, but in how we live with what we do. 5 years later, Miguel stood on another stage, this time watching Sophia deliver her valedictorian address at Westbrook Academy. She spoke confidently, switching effortlessly between languages just as he had done that night at the gala. My father taught me that our worth isn't determined by others' perceptions, she said. He showed me that true education isn't just about accumulating knowledge but about maintaining dignity and compassion even when faced with prejudice. In the audience, Miguel felt tears well in his eyes. Their journey had been long and often difficult, but in that moment, watching his daughter shine, every sacrifice felt worthwhile. Richard Harrington, still chairman of the board but now a close friend, leaned over to whisper, she's extraordinary, Miguel. Just like her father. Miguel shook his head slightly. No, Richard. She's better. She'll never know what it means to doubt her place in the world. That was always my dream for her. As Sophia concluded her speech to thunderous applause, Miguel reflected on the strange twist of fate that had brought them here. One moment of humiliation had transformed into an opportunity, not just for him and Sophia, but for countless others who would benefit from the programs he'd helped create. Sometimes, he thought, our greatest moments come not when we rise to success, but when we rise from failure with our dignity intact. That was the real lesson he hoped Sophia had learned, not the languages he'd taught her, but the quiet strength to stand tall even when the world tried to make her feel small. And as Sophia's eyes found his in the crowd, her smile radiant with pride and love, Miguel knew she understood. Some lessons didn't need translation. The summer after Sophia's graduation brought new challenges and opportunities for the Alvarez family. Miguel had been promoted to Executive Vice President of Global Strategy at Harrington Global Investments, a position that came with increased responsibilities and travel requirements. While the financial security was welcome, Miguel sometimes found himself missing the simplicity of their earlier life. "Dad, you're staring at your coffee again," Sophia said one morning, interrupting his thoughts. She was home from her freshman year at Harvard, where she'd received a full scholarship to study international relations. Miguel smiled apologetically. "Just thinking about how much has changed." Having second thoughts about success, she teased, pouring herself a cup from their expensive coffee machine, a far cry from the bargain brand they once rationed carefully. "No, just remembering where we came from." He gestured around their spacious Cambridge apartment, with its floor-to-ceiling bookshelves and view of the Charles River. "Sometimes I worry we might forget." Sophia sat across from him, her expression serious. "I could never forget, Dad. Not the apartment with the leaky ceiling, or the nights you came home with cleaning chemicals still on your hands, or how you'd still find energy to help me with homework." Miguel reached across to squeeze her hand. "I have something to discuss with you. Richard has asked me to establish a new international office in Barcelona. It would mean relocating there for at least 2 years." Sophia's eyes widened. "Barcelona? Where you taught? Where Mom?" "Yes," Miguel said softly. "Where your mother and I met. Where we were happy." They hadn't returned to Spain since fleeing the political unrest that had targeted academics and journalists when Sophia was small. Miguel had protected her from the full truth, that her mother, Elena, a prominent journalist, had received death threats for her exposés on government corruption. They had planned to leave together, but Elena had insisted on publishing one final piece. The night before their scheduled departure, she was killed in what authorities claimed was a random mugging. Miguel had fled with 4-year-old Sophia, carrying only what they could fit in 2 suitcases, his grief still raw and bleeding. America had been their sanctuary, but never truly home. Would it be safe now? Sophia asked. "Yes. The political situation has stabilized. Many of my former colleagues have returned." Sophia studied her father's face. "You want to go back, don't you?" Miguel hesitated. "I've built a good life here. Your life is here." "Dad," Sophia said firmly, "I'm 19. I can study abroad for a year. Harvard has exchange programs with universities in Barcelona." She paused. "Besides, I think it's time I learned more about Mom. About where I come from." Miguel felt a weight lift from his chest. "I've kept too much from you, trying to protect you." "I know," she said gently. "But I'm not a child anymore." 3 months later, Miguel stood on the balcony of his new apartment in Barcelona's Gothic quarter, the familiar sounds and sense of his homeland washing over him. The evening air carried the faint melody of a street guitarist and the aroma of paella from a nearby restaurant. His phone buzzed with a message from Sophia, who would arrive the following week to begin her semester at the University of Barcelona, the same institution where he had once taught and where he had first met Elena in a crowded faculty lounge, her journalist's notebook already filled with questions that would eventually lead to her death. The message contained a photo of Sofia holding up her Spanish passport, recently acquired through her right to citizenship as the daughter of Spanish nationals. Official now. See you soon, Papa. Red Heart. Miguel smiled, though his heart ached with bittersweet memories. Returning to Barcelona had been more emotional than he'd anticipated. Every street corner seemed to hold ghosts of his past life, the cafe where he and Elena had spent Sunday mornings, the park where they had taken baby Sofia to feed ducks, the university halls where his colleagues had warned him to leave before it was too late. A knock at the door interrupted his thoughts. Miguel wasn't expecting visitors, but he opened the door to find an elderly man with familiar eyes. Professor Alvarez? I thought it was you moving in. I live down the hall. Miguel stared in shock. Professor Martín? You're still here? Carlos Martín had been Miguel's mentor at the university, the department chair who had hired him as a young academic. The last time Miguel had seen him was the night Elena died, when Carlos had helped him arrange emergency travel documents. Still here, Carlos confirmed with a sad smile. Though retired now. May I come in? Over glasses of Rioja, the two men caught up on 20 years of separation. Carlos had followed Miguel's career from afar, having seen articles about the janitor who silenced a CEO that had made international news. I always knew you would rise again, Carlos said. Your talent was too great to be suppressed forever. Miguel shook his head. For many years, I didn't care about rising. I only wanted Sofia to have a chance. And now? Why return after all this time? Miguel considered the question. To make peace with the past, perhaps. To let Sofia know her heritage. Carlos nodded thoughtfully. Have you visited Elena yet? Miguel looked away. Not yet. I'm not sure I'm ready. Some wounds never fully heal, Carlos said gently. But they can become bearable with time. He hesitated. There's something else you should know. The journalist who continued Elena's investigation, he finally published the full exposé 3 years ago. The officials responsible for the crackdown, for what happened to Elena, they've been prosecuted. Miguel's hand tightened around his glass. Why didn't you tell me? How could I? You disappeared completely. It was safer that way. Carlos reached into his jacket and pulled out a folded newspaper clipping. But you should have this. Elena's name has been cleared. Her work vindicated. Miguel took the clipping with trembling hands. The headline read, Justice at Last, Murdered Journalist Elena Alvarez's Final Investigation Leads to Convictions. Does Sofia know any of this? Carlos asked. Not everything. I told her mother died in a mugging. I couldn't bear for her to know the truth, that Elena died because of her principles, because she wouldn't stay silent. Perhaps it's time she learned who her mother truly was, Carlos suggested. A hero, not a victim. The reunion between father and daughter at Barcelona airport was tearful and joyous. Sofia had grown into a young woman who resembled Elena more with each passing day, the same determined set to her jaw, the same inquisitive eyes. Welcome home, Miguel said, embracing her. It doesn't feel like home yet, Sofia admitted as they drove through the city. But it's strange, I have these flashes, like déjà vu. That park we just passed, did we go there when I was little? Miguel nodded. Every Sunday. You loved the carousel. They spent the first week exploring the city together, Miguel showing Sofia the Barcelona of his memories, his old university office, their former apartment building, Elena's favorite bookshop that remarkably still existed. But he avoided the cemetery where Elena was buried, and Sofia didn't ask. Until one evening, as they sat on the balcony watching the sunset paint the ancient buildings in gold. Dad, Sofia said carefully, I want to visit Mom's grave. Miguel had known this moment would come. Tomorrow, he promised. But first, there's something I need to tell you about how she died. As the night deepened around them, Miguel finally shared the full truth, about Elena's investigative work exposing corruption, about the threats, about her insistence on publishing one last story despite the danger. She wasn't randomly killed, he concluded, his voice hoarse. She was targeted because she refused to be silenced. Sophia sat in stunned silence, tears streaming down her face. Why didn't you tell me? At first, you were too young. Then, I was afraid you'd be angry that she chose her principles over her safety, over us. Later, I just wanted to protect you from the pain I carried. All these years, I thought she was just gone. A random victim. Sophia wiped her tears. But she was fighting for something. She was brave. The bravest person I've ever known, Miguel agreed. Until you. Sophia looked up in surprise. Me? You have her courage, Sophia. Her determination. When you stood on that stage as valedictorian, all I could see was Elena, her strength living on in you. Sophia moved to sit beside her father, leaning her head on his shoulder as she had done as a child. Tell me everything about her. Not just how she died, but how she lived. I want to know all of it. Through the night, Miguel shared stories he had kept locked away for years, how Elena had challenged authority from her first day as a student journalist, how she had once interviewed a corrupt minister while 8 months pregnant with Sophia, how she had taught herself English by listening to BBC broadcasts, how she had loved poetry and could recite Garcia Lorca from memory. By dawn, both father and daughter were exhausted but somehow lighter, as if the sharing of these memories had released something long trapped between them. I have something for you, Miguel said, retrieving a small wooden box from his bedroom. I've kept this hidden since we left Spain. Inside was a delicate gold necklace with a small pendant shaped like a quill pen. Your mother wore this every day. It was her talisman. She said it reminded her that words have power. As Miguel fastened it around Sophia's neck, she touched the pendant reverently. I'll wear it always. The cemetery was peaceful in the morning light, birds singing in the cypress trees that lined the paths. Miguel led the way to a simple headstone in a quiet corner. Elena Maria Alvarez. 1975 to 2007. La verdad no tiene la luz. Truth does not fear the light. Sophia knelt before the grave, tracing the engraved words with her fingertips. Did you choose the epitaph? Miguel nodded. It was something she said often. They stood together in silence, 20 years of absence and loss hanging between them and the stone. Then Sophia began to speak, in Spanish, then French, then English, Arabic, and Mandarin, telling her mother about her life, her achievements, her dreams for the future. I learned all these languages because of Dad, she concluded in Spanish. But now I understand it was also because of you, because you both believed in the power of communication, in speaking truth even when it's dangerous. Miguel watched his daughter with pride and sorrow intermingled. In that moment, he could almost feel Elena's presence, not as a ghost, but as a continuation, a thread woven through both their lives. As they turned to leave, Sophia linked her arm through his. Dad, I've been thinking about something. After I finish my degree, I want to establish a foundation in Mom's name, for journalists facing persecution, for families forced to flee like we were. Miguel felt his throat tighten. She would be so proud of you. Of us, Sophia corrected. We carried her forward, even when we couldn't speak her name without pain. We kept her truth alive. Miguel's return to Barcelona created ripples in academic and business circles. Former colleagues reached out, curious about the professor-turned-janitor-turned-executive. The University of Barcelona invited him to give a guest lecture on his journey and the importance of linguistic diversity in global business. Standing at the podium in the same hall where he had once taught literature felt surreal. The audience was packed with students, faculty, and local business leaders. In the front row sat Sophia, wearing Elena's necklace, and beside her, Richard Harrington, who had flown in for the occasion. "Many of you know parts of my story," Miguel began. The academic who fled political persecution. The janitor who confronted a CEO. The immigrant who reclaimed his professional standing. But these are just chapters in a longer narrative about identity, resilience, and the power of language. For the next hour, Miguel spoke about his experiences, not just the triumphant moment at the gala that had gone viral, but the years of struggle before it, the nights of exhaustion, the moments of doubt. "There is dignity in all work," he said. "During my years cleaning offices, I never stopped being a scholar, a father, a keeper of languages. I simply added another layer to my identity." He spoke about the immigrants he had met working night shifts, surgeons driving taxis, engineers washing dishes, professors delivering packages, all of them carrying invisible libraries of knowledge and experience. "The tragedy is not that a professor became a janitor to survive," Miguel concluded. "The tragedy is how many minds, how many gifts remain hidden because we fail to look beyond surface appearances, because we allow artificial barriers to human potential." The standing ovation lasted several minutes. Afterward, as Miguel greeted well-wishers, a young woman approached him hesitantly. "Professor Alvarez? My name is Fatima. I'm a Syrian refugee studying here on scholarship." She spoke in careful Spanish. "Your story, it gives me hope. I was a medical student in Damascus before the war. Now I clean hotel rooms while trying to continue my studies." Miguel took her hand warmly. "What languages do you speak, Fatima?" "Arabic, English, some French, and now Spanish," she replied. "For keys," Miguel smiled. "Keep them polished. And come see me tomorrow at my office. I think Harrington Global might need a medical consultant for our new healthcare initiative." That evening, Miguel hosted a small dinner party at his apartment. Sophia, Richard, Carlos, and several former colleagues. The conversation flowed easily, switching between languages as topics changed, wine was poured, and memories shared. Richard, who had been quietly observing, raised his glass. "I've been thinking about that night at the gala," he said. "About how differently things might have gone. If you hadn't been such a snob." Sophia suggested with a teasing smile. She and Richard had developed an unlikely friendship over the years. Richard laughed. "Exactly. If I hadn't made assumptions based on Miguel's job and his worn suit, I might never have learned the lesson that transformed our company." He turned to Miguel. "You could have just endured my rudeness silently. Many would have. Instead, you chose to stand your ground with dignity." "I did it for Sophia," Miguel said simply. "I wanted her to see that her father may have been a janitor, but he was not without worth or voice." "And now," Richard continued, "that moment has led to our scholarship programs, our immigrant recruitment initiative, even our return to Barcelona." He raised his glass higher. "To the power of 5 languages and one man's dignity." As glasses clinked around the table, Miguel caught Sophia's eye. In her gaze, he saw Elena's determination, his own resilience, and something uniquely her own, a fierce compassion that would carry her forward into a future bright with possibility. Later, after the guests had departed and Sophia had gone to bed, Miguel returned to the balcony alone. The Barcelona night spread before him, both familiar and new. He thought about the strange circular journey that had brought him back to where he started, yet changed in ways he could never have imagined. From professor to janitor to executive. From husband to widower to single father. From refugee to immigrant to returnee. Each transition had required him to reinvent himself while holding on to his essential truth. In his pocket, he carried the newspaper clipping about Elena that Carlos had given him. Justice had come late, but it had come. Perhaps that was true for him as well, recognition delayed but not denied, dignity temporarily obscured but never truly lost. The city lights twinkled below, and somewhere in the distance, church bells marked midnight. Miguel whispered into the night air, "We made it, Elena. We came home." The Alvarez Foundation for Journalistic Freedom launched 2 years later, on the anniversary of Elena's death. The inaugural event was held in the Grand Hall of the University of Barcelona, with dignitaries from around the world in attendance. Sofia, now a graduate student specializing in human rights law, stood at the podium with the confidence of someone twice her age. The small gold quill pen glinted at her throat as she addressed the audience.